All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I assume Gloria will make it. So Abe, why don't you see who's going to join us for the June 10th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting.
Councilmember Diariga.
Present.
Councilmember De La Rosa is absent right now. Mayor Donahue.
I am here. All right. Anybody from the public wish to have at us? Okay, they're not here. All right, Abe, back to you.
California Government Code 84308, Levine Act. Do any members of the committee have any campaign contributions to disclose related to any items on today's agenda? Councilmember Diariga.
No.
Mayor Donahue.
I do not. Okay. All right, let's see. I will take a walk on the wild side, and I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, call for the question.
Yeah. Councilmember Diariga.
Yes.
Mayor Donahue. Motion passes.
All right, we always seem to win passing the minutes. That's good. All right. I saw her beating me over here, so I know she's here. Selena, you're up.
Thank you. Good afternoon, committee chair and committee member Selena Andrews, finance director. The item before you is the fiscal year 25-26 operating capital budget update. Staff recommends that the finance committee receive an update and provide input on the fiscal year, on the proposed fiscal year 25-26 budget. In May 2020, City Council approved the City Council strategic goals and priorities. These goals and priorities were incorporated in the development of the proposed budget. As you can see, economic development, housing infrastructure, city services, public safety, youth, and seniors, along with a subset of goals identified within each category. The proposed city budget increased to approximately $285 million with the additional operating and capital investments that we'll go over today and are also identified in the staff report. This graph illustrates approximate amounts per fund. The chart was presented at the May 27th budget study session, and it'll be updated to include the additional $8 million CIP investments and additional operating funding investments. So this budget includes positions that are being recommended for addition. Some were frozen and are being recommended to unfreeze, and some add deletes because departments have identified priorities that for these positions that maybe were identified in previous years. So the deputy fire marshal is a new position. Management analyst is a new one. The administrative analyst is also a new, and community outreach specialist are both new. I would like to point out that while the admin analyst and the community outreach specialist are currently included in the budget, they were not included as ongoing positions, and they will be included in the final budget. And then there's a senior planner, half an FTE. There is a current half FTE, so this would bring that position up to 1 full-time. Additional positions that are included in the proposed budget are identified here as new or add deletes. Add deletes is basically a reclassification, so another position was removed in place of that one. And this is a continuation of those positions that you'll see in the city's workforce being added within the respective departments. There's also some increases in the operating budget, non-salary related, and that's the capacity for code enforcement. Staff, at the meeting, staff heard that there was additional need for code enforcement, and this is what is being recommended. Increase it by $50,000, so the total will be $335,000, as well as a rental assistance budget that was increased for a total of $500,000. Now we're going to go into this additional CIP investments. We did talk about this as a potential inclusion in the proposed budget. And the additions here are sidewalks, street and sidewalk repairs. So it's going to be an additional $2 million for a total of $11.3 million. We're also recommending to increase the traffic calming budget by $300,000 for a total of $500,000. And the Baranda Road Congestion Relief Project by $2 million for a total of $2.9 million. Lastly, this is a new project for the Abbott Street, and that's $4 million is what we're recommending as funding. The next steps are staff will come to present the proposed budget on June 17th. And with that, staff is available for questions. And all the departments are here to answer questions.
That's exciting. Margaret?
You have a few questions. Can you go over the add delete part again on that slide? I just want to make sure I understand exactly what that means. I guess the reason I'm asking because I hate just throwing money at problems and just adding people to solve them. And the 18, I think it's 18 total FTEs that we're adding, which was a little bit alarming just because it's a big number. But some of them you explained that they are because of increasing someone from part-time to full-time, which thank you for that explanation. That solved some of my questions. But I just kind of want to know about the add delete ones that you mentioned.
So these were positions that were currently in the city workforce, and they were within these respective departments. Departments have identified other priorities, and so positions are being replaced. So essentially, they're swaps. So the position is being deleted in order to add this one.
Okay.
And in some instances, I'll point out in library and community services, 2 positions were removed to add this one that is being recommended.
Okay, so in some cases, it's like a net zero, basically.
It is.
It's a trade-off, yeah.
In most cases,
Okay.
we're actually down 1 because of the one department that decreased their workforce by 2 to add the 1 because that was a priority.
Okay. And then my next question's on the CIP investments. Can you give a little more detail on the repair budget for the streets and sidewalks? I'm sorry, no, not that one. I'm good with that one because I think infrastructure is super important. The Baranda Road Congestion Relief Budget, $2 million. So I guess apparently we had only allocated $900,000 before. Now we're adding $2 million. And what does that look like? What does that include? Because that, again, is a big number, and I just want to understand how we're going to spend that.
Thank you for the question. Public Works Director is here to answer that.
Yeah, the $2 million, this is for the Phase 2A portion of the project, which it starts off to where Phase 1 ends, just east of McKinnon Avenue. So we need to start the design work on the next phase. So this $2 million allows us to actually start the design phase of the project.
Okay, so this is something that's been in the process and planning. That's just another phase that we hadn't funded for. Now we're looking for funding for this
Correct.
upcoming.
As we move through the Baranda project, we will move all the way to Williams Road with the project. But
Okay.
right, we do it in phases because we can't afford the whole thing.
Right, okay. And then if you can go over the Abbott Street project as well, the $4 million, what that will include.
That gets us to the point where we can actually do a little bit more of Abbott Street. It's in our year 2 of our pavement program. And we were only going to do a portion of Abbott Street with the money we have. This $4 million actually gets us to do a little bit more. And again, we don't know exactly how much we're gonna do with the 4 million because we don't know the condition of the roadway until we get into design, and we just started the design now. We just know that Abbott Street's gonna be expensive to do properly. So we'd like to add money in there so that we can do more of Abbott when we get to it.
Okay, yeah, just the weight and the traffic is a huge concern. And I imagine that we're probably going to end up having to do a congestion relief project on that one as well, because I'm already hearing from the farmers and such that congestion's bad enough as it is, and it's only going to continue to get much worse. So hopefully we'll be able to start addressing those concerns going forward. Thank you. Those are my questions.
David, since you're there, I'll start with you. So number, Public Works, well, let me just stay with that quickly. Where, if you can't do all Abbott, where do you start? I mean, is it
Mayor,
in
Mayor.
Harkins and Blanco or? Thank you. Yeah, where does the process begin? With
Yeah,
that?
so right now, we're looking at starting at Sanborn and working our way south.
Okay.
And hopefully this 4 million gets us to the railroad tracks. And then we'll work on funding from the railroad tracks further south. But again, it all depends on how much of the pavement we can save, how much of the reclamation we can do, what process we end up settling on. So all those are taking into consideration as we move forward with the project. So with the 4 million in there, we know we have an extra 4 million to plan for the length of the project.
Well, it is certainly worth noting that $4 million gets you from Sanborn to the railroad tracks only maybe.
Yes.
So in other words, when I went on a meals.
Well, 4 million gets us there because we have money in next year's budget for Abbott Street, because it's in our year 2 of our pavement program. So there's some money in there for Abbott already, and we were only going to do a little bit.
Right.
Now with 4 million more, we're going to do a little bit more.
Yeah, well, no, well, what I think is important is, you know, that's not very much. That's nobody's fault, and it's gonna be up to us to, you know, communicate the extent of, you know, what it costs to repair, you know, to actually do street paving and all that fun stuff. So with everything that Lisa just presented, and since, you know, having spent my career in the ag industry and hanging around growers, we always think we're drinking from a fire hose and everything needs to happen yesterday. This is no different when it comes to public works. So with the positions added, the dollars increased, on average, if we as a council wanted to communicate, and you've schooled us pretty well on lane miles, and you know, you two are very good at my favorite answer, it depends. What can we communicate that with these dollars relative to streets and sidewalks, that on, you know, give or take, we're gonna do 25% more this coming year? I mean, is there something we can work with to communicate?
Well, this funding actually gets us to the point where we were funded in the last couple of years with ARPA money. So what we've done in the last 2 years is what we would continue to do for this, for the 3rd year with this extra $2 million, because we've been doing $2 million projects over the last 3 years.
Right. No, and I appreciate that. Then the question, so for instance, if you go to the increases the streets and sidewalk repair budget by a couple $1 million, so moving beyond Abbott Street, you know, does that allow us to communicate, as a council, we've made a commitment to do 10% more, 20% more, so on average, depending upon the configuration of what's in the queue, you know, I mean, there's a difference between a corner sidewalk and then the piece you did by Lucky's where it might be the whole sidewalk on the street. How do we communicate this?
It's a tough question because, again, we haven't, once we get the budget is when we decide how much, where the sidewalks are gonna go. And then we decide, we look at the project, then we have to design it, and then we do a cost estimate and said, okay, this is what we can afford. we'll put a project together, and then we have additive alternatives in case we get a good bid. So it's hard to tell you we're going to do 20% more, because we don't know what we're going to do until we have the budget set and we go actually out in the field and start looking at where the project's going to happen, how much ramps we have to do, how many drive approaches we have to do, and all that stuff plays into how much money or how much sidewalk we're going to actually do. And when we get into ramps, ramps are $7,500 to $8,000 a piece, and those are required when we do any kind of pavement work on a roadway. So if we improve the pavement, we have to do the ramps. So we have to catch up to where we were last year. So those ramps take away from how much lineal sidewalk we can do.
No, and I appreciate that. And this is just, and I appreciate, and that's a fair answer. Just I would ask that as we move along, it's challenging for us when we're asked the question, the answer is more, we'll do more.
Okay, so yeah, as we go, and I'll talk to the design team and say, okay, when can you know how much we're gonna get with this $2 million? And as soon as we know, we'll communicate that with
Yeah,
you.
I mean, because I think we've got to be managing expectations, what to expect. And then the last thing is, are we doing any streets? Are we projected to do any streets? So like, I delivered Meals on Wheels today, and the very nice couple that I worked with, they lived on La Mesa, and I immediately went, uh-oh, I'm in trouble now. Are we going to pave any streets?
We are paving some streets, yes. We're gonna do some local streets this year with the paving crew, because over the last couple of years, we've been using ARPA money, and so we haven't been using the CIP for the pavement work. So we're gonna switch from doing crack filling to doing pavement work, and so we're gonna do some local streets with our paving crew. And so we will be doing paving. At the next council meeting, we'll be awarding the 25 pavement project, which is doing pavement on certain streets, and I don't have them off the top of my head.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just think it'll be important to communicate, this is the upcoming fiscal year game plan, so people can see it and understand
Okay.
it. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. All right, Lisa. Again, in a spirit of more, quicker, faster, better.
Yes.
How do all of these positions facilitate that? What are we able to communicate that with these additions to your team, what can folks expect?
Yes, so first, by increasing the half-time senior planner to a full-time senior planner, we discussed at a previous finance committee, the building of capacity and the dedication of this individual, this position to really focus on the coordination between divisions and departments to ensure a smooth flow with the future growth area applications and really to stay on top of those. An additional associate planner would also be providing that support for the senior planner because we have a high volume of applications that we need to turn around in a short amount of time according to set guidelines. Once they get through our entitlement process, they will then hit downstairs. And so that's where we need the additional permit clerk and permit technician to facilitate that intake. We are continuing just in general to see continued high numbers in terms of volume of application, as well as individual property owners submitting accessory dwelling unit applications. And so we see that the plan checker would be to support standing up our residential team in the permit center that would really focus on more customized review and customer service to guide those property owners through the accessory dwelling unit process, because we're tending to see a high volume of rounds of review and we want to eliminate that. So that's where that plan checker will come in, as well as we see the increased volume of coming from the future growth area entitlement into the actual building side, they will also support that residential effort. In terms of the supervising plan checker, currently we have a senior engineer Senior Plan Check Engineer is the title, and we've gone through multiple rounds of unsuccessful recruitments. However, we need support. We need a supervisor-level support to coordinate the workflow between the plan reviewers as well as with the consultants that we're relying on. So we are pivoting and asking to, at this time, remove the Senior Plan Check engineer and shift to a supervising plan checker who could oversee the additional plan checker as well as existing plan review staff.
Okay, rough estimate in your mind how quickly all this can come together for you?
That is a little bit of an unknown, but we are working closely with Human Resources to go ahead and queue up those recruitments in advance of, we can establish an eligibility list, so we are not going to necessarily wait until the July 1st date to start recruiting.
All right, and what as you probably know, there, if you follow various email threads, public, and what is the capacity issue of code enforcement? Where are we?
So currently in code enforcement, we have two vacancies, two code enforcement officer vacancies. And we are wrapping up the process with Human Resources to finalize an updated job description that is a code 2/1. It's a flexible position that allows for promotion as the skills and experience are demonstrated, as well as we are, as part of this process, we're establishing a rotating schedule. So building internal capacity to address special events, evenings, weekend hours. Currently, we are relying 100% on outside consultant services through Wildan to provide the evening and weekend support. And so this current budget, it includes $35,000 of overtime for staff on these rotating schedules, as well as $300,000 to support the contract services that are being provided, primarily at this time focused on unpermitting vendors on the evenings and weekends.
Okay, all right, very good. That's it, thank you. All right, I will do first responders. I'll start with the fire chief. Chief?
Good afternoon.
Just any thoughts from you on the budget? You're amongst friends. I won't tell anyone.
As we talked about at the last study session, the position that's added here really it helps us move toward implementing our master plan.
Okay.
As was discussed, our business inspection program that was queued up prior to COVID that was paused was a plan to initiate an element of that plan in the community risk reduction plan. And that's a program in and of itself. It's a large piece of the prevention division that really goes toward community risk reduction. So that position is really going to be responsible for getting that program up and running, and the revenue that is generated by that to support adding and building out the prevention bureau as the master plan calls for. Everything from inspection resources, plan checking, everything to support what our community development director just laid out for you as well with the future growth area is the focus of that position right now.
Okay, good. So it sounds like a good addition. Right, and then I understand you have to think in the out years in terms of new equipment, and how does that work, and how does that fall into budgets? It takes, from what I understand, several years to get equipment, so no near-term budget impact, but we have to make commitments as a city to, hey, I want one of those.
Correct. Like buying a capital asset like that, there are different ways to procure those. There are different economies that are realized. Obviously, paying up front gives you better discounts. Paying when they get here, you're going to pay a little more. It becomes a cash flow issue. So, I look to the finance director and the city manager making those decisions based on how to best structure those procurements. But just for you to know that because of those extended build times, we're asking a lot of our fleet to withstand the abuses that we have to get an extra 5 years out of what otherwise a unit that would be put into reserve status. And I worry about the resiliency of the fleet.
Okay, so that's something the council should be mindful of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're working, and finance is looking at several financing alternatives. We'll probably be bringing something to the council shortly after your break. So whatever is decided there, it's hard now to put it reflected in the budget because we simply just don't know. But we recognize the incredible lead times. I think they've extended. It used to be a few years. Now I think we're running into even 4 or 5 years to get things done. So you will have something in front of you sometime after you come back from your break within the next few months.
Okay, I mean, is there any particular high-dollar piece of equipment that's vulnerable now, or it sounds like we have time to kind of set
So-
up shop with the game plan?
So in our last budget, we did order a pumping apparatus, a small quick attack apparatus for our wildland areas, and another ladder truck as part of our original apparatus replacement plan. Obviously, that got jumbled around with COVID, and a lot of that got extended because of those incredible lead times. We have not seen lead times like this before to build a piece of apparatus. You know, typically it's a 12 to 15 month process from the time you order something to the time it's built and shows up. Now, without pushing out 4 to 5 years in some cases for a piece of ladder apparatus. Again, that's the problem we're dealing with, and the moving target with tariffs, especially with steel and aluminum right now, is those prices are all over the place, and those quotes are tough to nail down. So yes, we're looking at replacing another ladder apparatus. We have 2, and they were purchased several years apart for that reason. So we would make sure that we would have one moving into reserve status as one was still in frontline service. So it's time to replace that, and also 2 additional pumping apparatus by that time.
So the budget also reflects, we've been financing some of the equipment. So part of one of the strategies is the budget does have existing capacity to finish paying out what we owe, but certainly we can continue that for new apparatuses. So there's a timing element here as well. So, you know, I think you'll have several options that'll come before you. I mean, as things are dropping off, from a financing perspective, the budget has that capacity, so we can certainly continue that in future years. So there is some capacity as we move forward because the budget already reflects some expenditures for existing equipment that we're finishing paying off. So you can look at it, there's some capacity built in already.
Okay. All right, good. All right, thank you, Chief. All right. Chief Acosta, you're next up. And while you're en route, Selena, question for you. So an operating fund balance of 2.8 million, that is in addition to an operating reserve of approximately $12 million?
That is correct. This is in addition to, we've already taken into account the reserves, and the fund balance is unrestricted.
Okay, so the 2.8 in theory would be the carryover to next year's budget?
Correct. That's, we don't have a final fund balance because we haven't closed out the year. That's provided that all the expenditures are used up, the revenue comes in as planned. So that's the number we're
Okay,
at.
so
It's an estimate, so we're still working through the
Okay,
numbers.
so really it's, as you said the last time in terms of mitigations, is there's the 12 million reserve, and then this is also kind of part of the mitigation.
Correct.
Mitigation
Correct,
plan.
in addition to other reserves.
Okay, all right. Okay, so question, Chief, how many, what's the number in the budget for number of officers going forward?
157.
157, and are there some frozen positions?
Yeah, so 161 when 4 of those are frozen.
4 of those are frozen, and right now we are at,
Sworn personnel right now is 133.
and I know all the good work you're doing of beginning to build the force, so that number plus what in the queue?
So we have currently 11 recruits in the police academy. We cannot designate them as officers until they graduate with their post-certificate. So we have 11 in academies now, and then 13 vacancies. So that's what gives us 133.
Okay. So I see, if I recall, the last, we've flipped a couple of positions that, I just remember the box score the last time, additional considerations. There were two folks in there, but they're already here,
Correct,
so we're keeping them.
correct. We're including them as ongoing positions.
Okay. So what are, so the new positions above and beyond that going forward are, there's a management analyst?
Correct, a management analyst, an administrative analyst, and a community outreach specialist.
Okay. And if, Chief, what else might be something we might consider if we had a little room to play with in the budget? You know, because we're going to be budgeted for the 161 for Frozen, right? So I mean,
Correct.
That's in the budget. So the 2.8 is on top of that. So my basic question is, in all, the 161 for Frozen is in the budget.
The Frozen are not budgeted,
Okay, so 157 is in the budget.
correct.
Okay. So in light of that and how long things take, are there some other things that would be helpful to the department?
Yeah, two positions that we had discussions about. One of them was a personnel and training position, and the other one was a communications specialist.
Okay. So that's communications, so that's different than community outreach. Okay, got it, okay. Okay. Well, if you're shorthanded, those would seem to me to be good things.
Well, yeah, well, these are critical positions that, as we start to grow the organization, this is an integral part of how we want to grow and when we grow, especially the personnel and training position. You know, we want to optimize our deployment model, but we can't do any of that until we actually grow the department. So considering that we are down significant positions, that is a position that we've had some discussions about in the past.
Okay, and so, I mean, and as a practical matter, they could be the equivalent of force multipliers to some degree in terms of additional productivity and that sort of thing. They have a little bit of a weighted average, or at least one of, to some degree?
Yes, well, it should be noted that years ago, when we had more staffing, we had a full dedicated police officer in the personnel and training. My goal is to restructure that and have somebody doing the same administrative task and job at a much lower cost, meaning the civilian personnel, so that our sworn personnel can concentrate on the larger task at hand when it comes to personnel and training.
Right. Okay. It seems to me it's important to explore that sooner rather than later.
Sure, I mean, if that's direction, we'll explore. We've been talking about it, and part of the idea was when and how can we bring it in as quickly as possible. So part of the challenge here is understanding kind of the first look at the budget, kind of council's response, and kind of where priorities lie. And, you know, because we don't get that before you till we present it to you.
Right, understood.
So if that's something that you want us to focus, we can certainly kind of focus on. There's a couple of things that are right now the department's trying to deal with sworn personnel, which is not optimal. HR is working on it daily, and Otania's there. They're all working on it. So at what point do you introduce that position? It's going to take us a while to fill it. So I think there's capacity for us to have that conversation. As we ramp up the officers coming on board, then we can have another conversation with the council. You keep saying kind of, yes, public safety, what do we need in public safety moving forward, right? So that would help define all of that conversation, but we certainly need to get to a baseline. And the baseline right now is the authorized positions that we have in the budget, which we're not there yet at. So that's a long-winded answer to say that if this is something you want us to sort of focus on, we can certainly look at it and bring it back.
Yeah, I think it's important because it's interesting to me, and I think Margaret would echo. You know, when we made the rounds, public safety was front and center. Yet oddly enough, you know, moving throughout the community this past fall. Now, I don't say this is forever. Nobody brought up gangs to me. Didn't. So what that tells me, everyone was concerned. They had a strong interest in public safety, but I think it kind of speaks to, I mean, police work is police work, but, I think one where you're trying to take the department and community engagement, but I also think it speaks to the need to, what the public is looking for has not necessarily expanded, but when you start dealing, whether it's speeding, sideshows, whatever it is, I think whatever gives the department flexibility in a kind of a maybe changing environment, that might not be the right phrase, but it's going to take a while to hire folks, so I understand that. But I mean, I would like to see that built in, that is directional and foundational moving forward. So I'd like to see that. See that if that could be explored. So, any technology we should be thinking about at this point, or are you good with one drone, or do you want 10?
Well, technology is obviously a really important integral piece of policing. As you mentioned, it is a force multiplier in a variety of different ways. It allows us, such as cameras, flock cameras, to identify and apprehend individuals in specific areas. But absolutely, more flock cameras would be very helpful and beneficial, that we can sort of strategically place them in our city. I think with the technology we do have, it's been really, really good.
Okay.
And as we move forward in the world of criminal organizations, and we have to be a step ahead of them. And technology is one piece of how we do that.
Okay, so that's something it sounds like we should keep an eye on.
Yeah, and we are closely working with whatever
And I know
grants
you're
are
being-
available and so forth.
Okay. Good, all right. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Kristen? Just kind of a general question. I know we've talked about it, but, with, Gloucester's undergoing its revitalization, Ensign scheduled to come online, and I know there's kind of a working cost, let's say $500,000 for there, and then we chatted about Natividad. Are you seeing, any, and this isn't meant to put anyone on the spot in any way, shape, or form, just in terms of, are there sufficient dollars? I know Gloria's been concerned about the tables at Cesar Chavez Park. I mean, is there any, not that one gets casual about 100,000 here or 200,000 there, but are there some things we should be, and I know staff has worked really, really hard, so we just want to ask some additional questions based on some of the things we hear, because I on line item by line item. So is there anything that
Sure.
you'd like us to take a look at that maybe hasn't been brought up?
So I think this budget does include about $93,000 additional dollars for park maintenance functions, and that's a combination of additional supply money to allow our teams to do more repairs throughout the year. But it also includes the expansion of a contract for our mow and landscaping to bring on Ensign. And so we're adjusting as we are. I do think long-term, we do need to identify or increase our existing park maintenance staffing levels as the budget does allow. We are well above what the national standard is 10 acres per FTE, and I think we're 15, 16. And then certainly that's growing, obviously, with the addition of the Ensign community, the neighborhood park, which is about 6 or 7 acres. And then we'll be looking in the coming year for the additional 67 acres. And so those are going to require additional resources. I think we have some time to breathe through, the next year as we continue to assess that. We've got a lot of big projects underway, and so that's really consuming a lot of our administrative efforts to bring on Hebron, to bring on Gloucester. We've got restroom repairs at Gloucester. We're working on some firehouse repairs and a restroom ADA upgrade there. So there's lots of projects going on, so I would hesitate to add additional resources at this moment because we wouldn't be able to move those forward for some time. We're getting a little further into these processes. I mean, Hebron, we're expecting to open those doors in December, so that project will be done. Gloucester's another year plus away, and then we've have some of the other ones. So we're making good progress, but I would hesitate to say designate additional dollars now. That may take us some time to actually move forward.
All right.
Hello, sorry I was late. I was at a function that Supervisor Alejo put on, and it's to celebrate 50 years of the small hole that went away in CRLA. So anyways, my question to you is, if we don't have money in this budget to replace tables and benches that are so necessary, and I know you probably did an assessment on the rest of the parks, because we've talked about it. So can you let us know where the necessities are? Because we have quite a few generous Rotary clubs that are looking for projects, and that maybe a Rotary club could donate some of the things that we need for our parks.
And so let me clarify, I'm not speaking to our inability to repair tables and benches.
No.
We have staffing we have budgetary resources to do that. I'm talking about bigger projects like a brand new restroom, right? Or more of those construction projects.
Okay.
We are currently working through a plan to address the bench repairs that are needed throughout the park. We've already started at least 2 different locations we've identified. Cesar Chavez has gotten a facelift in terms of repairing those benches. So we're working towards that and establishing an ongoing plan that would help us address those as they come up in a planned strategy versus one-offs where we just get a Q alert about them. Because I think those are things we can be proactive in addressing.
So the bigger project that you just mentioned, which takes a lot of more money, is redoing the bathroom in Hebron Heights or replacing it.
Yeah,
The one-
that would be a significant project from a planning effort to, going through construction and that kind of a thing.
So that we're not seeing that in this budget.
Not currently.
So maybe we can bring it back next year?
We can certainly look at that, absolutely.
Yeah, because the residents from that area want a bathroom, and, they need it. The people are walking around that area all the time, and we need a bathroom. We need it open. So, thank you.
Right. All right. All right. Anybody from the public? Okay. All right. Back to the committee for any final comments. Margaret?
I don't have any final comments. Thank you.
Okay. Gloria?
No, thank you.
Okay. No, this is great, very, very, very helpful, and I know a lot of work has gone into it because I hang out in the finance department. That's my hideaway. So I know everyone's hard at work, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that really a strong effort. You all would know it anyway, because I think we're all on the same page in terms of how we're trying to, move things forward and respond to the public. And I think all of this reflects it. And, so my questioning certainly comes from the smarter you make me, then the more inquisitive I get. So view my questions in that light. And, no, I think it is always my hope that the budget meeting is one of the more anticlimactic meetings of the year, because a lot of good work is done ahead of time. So we'll find out if that's the case or not next Tuesday. But I think a lot of good work, and I know everyone's worked really hard on this. So, all right. Well, you did. However, do not let it be said that I am not open to hearing from the public. So you get 2 minutes. Okay. And then we'll adjourn.
Hi, I think you all know me. But the reason I wanted to speak is I've identified, and Christian will know more than me because she's the director, but I've identified about 40 to 50 parks in Salinas And that's just in the area, not past, I think the last one I saw was Fort Ord, which is further out. But most of the parks that I've noticed in Salinas, when I've passed by, they're only used at the weekends. They're not used normally during the week. If there's any activity in the parts that I passed through this morning, everything was empty. And of course, it was early. Who expects to be at the park at 11 or 12? But how does that, I guess Christian would know about that, how it's managed, or who would, how can we get more people to go to the parks instead of just building all the parks that we already have? Carl Lake, I hardly ever see anybody there, the new one. I've been to Cesar Chavez. I only see when they're giving out food there. And Gloucester Park, the same thing. There's not people during the day. They seem to be more towards the evening. So all that is wasted space, in my opinion, because I don't know, is there any way to consolidate all these parks instead of having 40 to 50 parks in Salinas that aren't being used? Kind of reminds me of the soccer field that's only open at weekends. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Yolanda. Okay, all right. With that, we're adjourned, and apparently we're going to do this specifically again on July 1st, but but we're going to pass a budget next Tuesday, June 17th, so see you then.